France, 1789. The air in Paris was thick with tension, and the cobblestone streets echoed with the footsteps of thousands who struggled to survive. The city, once a symbol of culture and enlightenment, was now a place of hunger, unrest, and growing anger. The people of France, especially in the bustling capital, were facing a crisis unlike any they had ever known. Food was scarce, prices were soaring, and hope seemed to be slipping away with every passing day. While the common people starved, forced to scrape together crumbs just to survive, the king and queen lived in unimaginable luxury. The royal family resided in the magnificent palace of Versailles, surrounded by gold, fine art, and endless feasts. Their lives were a world apart from the suffering outside their gilded gates. The contrast between the opulence of the monarchy and the misery of the masses was stark, and resentment simmered just beneath the surface. "Your Majesty, we have no bread to eat." The desperate cries of the people echoed through the streets and into the halls of power. Mothers pleaded for food to feed their children. Fathers begged for work to provide for their families. And the elderly simply hoped for a warm meal. Bread, the staple of the French diet, had become a luxury that few could afford. The people's suffering was met with indifference from those in power. "If they have no bread, let them eat cake." These infamous words, often attributed to Queen Marie Antoinette, captured the disconnect between the monarchy and the people. Whether or not she actually said them, the phrase became a symbol of royal ignorance and arrogance. The queen, dressed in silks and jewels, seemed oblivious to the pain outside her palace walls. To the starving masses, her words were a cruel joke, a sign that the rulers of France neither understood nor cared about their plight. Enough! Liberty, equality, fraternity! The people had reached their breaking point. The ideals of the Enlightenment, freedom, equality, and brotherhood began to take hold in the hearts and minds of ordinary citizens. They no longer wanted to be subjects of a distant king, they wanted to be citizens of a free nation. The tricolor flag, with its bands of blue, white, and red, became a symbol of hope and unity. Crowds gathered in the streets, chanting for change and demanding justice. "No more tyranny. Today, we stormed the Bastille." On July 14th, 1789, the anger of the people erupted into action. A mob of Parisians marched to the Bastille, a medieval fortress and prison that had come to represent the absolute power of the king. Armed with whatever weapons they could find, the crowd broke down the gates and freed the prisoners inside. The storming of the Bastille was more than just an attack on a building. It was a declaration that the people would no longer be ruled by fear and oppression. Long live the revolution! The fall of the Bastille sent shockwaves throughout France and across Europe. For the first time, the people had shown that they could challenge the king's authority and win. The streets of Paris erupted in celebration as men and women embraced, sang, and waved the tricolor flag. The revolution had begun and there was no turning back. And so began the French Revolution, a fight for freedom that changed the world forever. Over the next decade, France would be transformed by violence, hope, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The revolution inspired people everywhere to question authority and demand their rights. It was a time of great uncertainty, but also of incredible possibility. The old order was crumbling, and a new world was being born. In 18th century France, society was divided. The king and nobles enjoyed luxury, while common people suffered. The country was organized into three estates: the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. The first two estates, though small in number, held most of the wealth and power. They paid little or no taxes, while the third estate, the vast majority of the population, shouldered the burden of supporting the entire nation. This unfair system bred resentment and anger among the people. "My lord, we work day and night, yet we starve. We have no bread." The peasants toiled endlessly in the fields, growing the food that fed the nation, yet they could barely feed themselves. Their backs were bent from labor, their hands calloused and worn. They paid heavy taxes to the king, tithes to the church, and dues to the local nobility. After all this, there was little left for their own families. Hunger and hardship were their constant companions. "Then work harder, peasant. We nobles do not pay taxes. That is for people like you." The arrogance of the aristocracy was infuriating. They saw themselves as superior, entitled to privilege by birth alone. While the peasants struggled to survive, the nobles attended lavish balls, wore the finest clothes, and dined on delicacies. They believed the suffering of the poor was simply the natural order of things. "If they have no bread, let them eat cake." The queen's dismissive attitude became a rallying cry for the revolutionaries. Her words, real or imagined, were repeated in the streets and used to fuel the anger of the people. The monarchy seemed hopelessly out of touch, blind to the suffering that was growing all around them. No bread, no justice, no more. The people's patience had run out. They gathered in the streets, holding up empty baskets as a symbol of their hunger and their determination. The cry for justice grew louder with each passing day. The revolution was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a reality. The people had enough. Taxes, hunger, and injustice pushed them to the edge. The government's attempts to raise more money only made things worse. Tax collectors roamed the countryside, squeezing every last coin from the poor. Families went hungry, children cried from hunger, and the streets of Paris were filled with unrest. The old ways could not continue. Brothers and sisters, we demand liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty, equality, fraternity. These words became the motto of the revolution. They were shouted from rooftops, painted on banners, and whispered in secret meetings. The people of France were united by a common cause, to create a society where everyone was equal, where freedom was a right, and where brotherhood bound them together. The revolutionaries were determined to build a new France, one that would be a beacon of hope for the world. On July 14th, 1789, the people attacked the Bastille, a prison and symbol of royal power. The storming of the Bastille was a turning point in history. It showed that the people could rise up and challenge the might of the monarchy. The fall of the Bastille became a symbol of freedom, and July 14th is still celebrated in France today as Bastille Day, a day of national pride and remembrance. What is happening? Why are my people against me? King Louis XVI was bewildered and afraid. He had never imagined that his subjects would dare to defy him. The king's advisors urged him to take action, but it was too late. The tide of revolution could not be stopped. The old order was collapsing and the king's power was slipping away. Because, Your Majesty, France belongs not to the king, but to its people. The revolutionaries made it clear that the days of absolute monarchy were over. The people demanded a voice in their own government. They wanted a constitution, rights, and representation. The king's authority was no longer absolute. It was being challenged at every turn. The French Revolution shook the world. It ended absolute monarchy and gave birth to modern democracy. The ideas that emerged from the revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity, spread far beyond France's borders. They inspired people in other countries to fight for their own rights and freedoms. The revolution was not just a French event, it was a turning point in world history. Long live the revolution! Long live the people of France! The legacy of the French Revolution lives on to this day. It reminds us that ordinary people, when united by a common cause, can change the course of history. The struggle for freedom, justice, and equality continues, inspired by the courage of those who dared to dream of a better world. The revolution was not perfect, and it came at a great cost, but it showed that the power of the people is stronger than the might of kings. Vive la Révolution!